Retro Groove. Enjoy your voyage.
Howdy and welcome to Retro Groove. I'm Liam D, and my buddy Adam C is off this week, but we're still a podcast. We still talk about music, standing the test of time, artists and albums and such that have shaped and reshaped the sonic landscape, and covering some new music from those artists too. This week, because I am sans Adam, I'm excited to be joined by my good friend Mark Says Hi. Thanks for hanging today, Mark.
You got it. Ben, I wish I would have used the moniker Mark S through my entire childhood. It would have saved me a lot of agony and pain.
Yeah, we did the Beastie Boys kind of thing, like Adam D, yeah, MCA. We were feeling like, Liam D feels good.
Yeah. Mark Seaman, are you there? It's Mark S.
Mark Seaman.
It's Mark S.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mark is a musician, a comedian, radio host, producer, and he and I met like 15 years ago, it must be at this point, as we were kind of clawing our way into the world of broadcast. And for better or for worse, here we are, right?
Yeah, I'm going to say better,
Yeah, I think so. That's cool. We're doing this.
There were
That's
some
cool.
worse patches in there, but not between you and I, obviously. It's not like we have some beef, but if we had some beef, it's because we went out to dinner together, and that was
that's right. It was delicious. Mark and I kind of bonded over our unique taste in music and our sense of humor and our kind of perspective on life, almost being in like a big corporate community and then just seeing how ridiculous but also wonderful it could be.
Right.
And so you were kind of my brother in arms for a long time there. As we took different paths, you were hosting radio shows and I was kind of putting stuff together behind the scenes. But it was, I've always kind of valued our friendship a lot. You meet so many people in this industry and you get to know a lot of people, and you can kind of see the relationships that last a while, just organically. And I've always, tossing texts around, meeting up with our families. So I've always I've really valued our friendship, and I'm excited to get to talk to you today a bit, and be on this side of the microphone a little bit with you.
Well, you told me to bring the music knowledge, not a Kleenex box. What's going on here, man? Look, to put it simply, there's always one, maybe two, if you're lucky, people in your life that know where the bodies are, and Liam knows where the bodies are. So that's how much I value our relationship. So couldn't have said it better myself. Very kind words, man. Too kind.
Appreciate it.
And hopefully we'll retire in Ireland somewhere and
something like
open
that.
up a comic book video game shop. So
yeah, that sounds awesome. So we're going to be talking about a few things today. We'll talk about some music we're listening to, a couple questions, a little music news, and then the reason that I asked you here, Weezer. So Weezer, in our little community, we have a lot of Weezer fans. It was actually just brought up the other day by Dan. He was talking about sort of the redeeming qualities of Make Believe as an album. And he doesn't know that we're talking about Weezer on this episode today, so
nice.
He's going to be pretty surprised.
He's going to freak.
Yeah. So our B-side this week is going to be a little Weezer talk, because Mark is a card-carrying member of the Weezer fan club, and I believe has been or was since its inception, almost.
Since
right?
the
for a long
inception.
time.
Yeah, we'll get into it, man. It's
yeah.
I mean, at this point, you can say AARP, I think, right? Is it?
Yeah, getting close to it. Yeah. So real quick, I don't know if you've got any music that you're listening to right now. I've got a couple things that I recently picked up that I'll point out to the audience. There's this great artist called Yola. She just put out her second album, produced by Dan Auerbach, called Stand For Myself. She's such a badass British lady who headed to Nashville and has kind of blended like a classic Motown sound with a Nashville kind of bluesy country edge, and she's killing it. So it's fantastic. Bleachers also just put out their album. That's Jack Antonoff's band. Killer. Like it's been said on this podcast a few times that I have a difficult relationship with Bruce Springsteen. He's not my favorite, but I can appreciate what he did to impact some of my favorite artists, and Jack's one of them. And what's crazy is Jack also just produced Lord's new album, which comes out this week, and I'm excited to check that out.
But not to stop you, Liam, but what album is Jack Antonoff not on, by by the way?
He does Taylor Swift.
I think he's on my new album, and I haven't even started recording it yet. So
I hope
he's
so.
Like, oh, Mark, I'm going to email you some tracks for your new album. What?
Yeah, a few shows back, the question got put to us by one of the community members: who would we want to work with? And I was just like, I guess Jack Antonoff. I don't have anything to work with. I have no music to make, but like if I did, I'd want to work with him because everybody else is. Yeah, that's
a great question. I mean, he's up there for sure. I ran into him randomly at a Mets game. We were walking.
Wow.
Back where the Shake Shack is, and I saw him, and like nobody, he's a short guy, right? And he's just walking by everyone,
unassuming,
super unassuming. And I just looked at him. I didn't want to call, you don't want to blow someone's spot up, right? So, but we made eye contact, and I gave him the head nod. I gave him
nice,
right on, man. And he just looked back and goes, "I got you."
That's awesome.
So he was pretty cool in that way. But that's a great question, man. There's this guy Linus of Hollywood. Do you know him?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Linus of Hollywood is amazing. Okay, he's so talented. He was in this band called Size 14, and they wrote a song called Claire Danes Poster, and it's really funny, right? And this is about early 2000s. It might even been 1999 or 2000. And we
love that era here.
Yeah, and he moved from Florida to California to work in music, and since then he's worked with huge acts, from like Pink. Mr. Big, like across the whole music spectrum. And this guy is just amazing. I can't encourage people to check out Linus of Hollywood. And he's also the guitar player for Nerf Herder right now. He's in like a boatload of bands. He's in this brand new band that just came out called Able Machines. And I don't know if you guys put links to any of this stuff, but I'm going to send you a link. It's a can't miss killer track.
Yeah, we'll put it on the playlist for sure.
Yeah, so check out Able Machines. They're going to blow up. And he's like play every instrument. The guy's just like a walking legend, and nobody knows who he is. It's a shame.
And he acts as a producer with those artists, or a songwriter.
Both. Sometimes just producer. Sometimes he'll just play bass. Like whatever someone needs, he'll just do it. And
cool.
It's pretty amazing.
Wow. And then the last thing I picked up was the Ava Max. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a recent pop artist. She's got an album called Heaven and Hell. My daughter is hooked on pop radio right now and has identified and fallen in love with like the 3 songs of hers that they're playing off of this album. And so I went to the record store to get some stuff, and my daughter came with me. And she likes flipping through. It's a fun thing to flip through and see all the pictures and see all the artists. And she saw her as we were, I knew we were looking in the right spot. And I wanted to see her reaction. And she saw it, and she's just like, Ava Max? And I was like, yeah, this is her album. This has all the music on it. And she's like, which song is this? And I was like, it's all of them. And she was like, Daddy, can I have this? And I couldn't say no. I try not to give her everything she wants, obviously. But I was like, you want to buy your first vinyl record with me right now? Yeah, we can do that.
She's like,
and I have a frame for it.
She's like, actually, hold on, this isn't 180 gram vinyl. Let's put this back. Let's put this back.
But it's clear orange. It's
nice.
Special edition clear orange.
Amazing.
So I was like, this is going to look really cool when we open it up.
That's great.
So we popped that on the record player and danced around to it, and it's just been one of those like. You have tons of seminal experiences as a parent, all these like mini milestones that are important to you, whatever they are. And I wasn't even anticipating that one at the moment. And I was like, oh, this is happening right now. Oh my God, this is great. Yeah, let's buy music together.
What a cool feeling, right? I mean,
it's so weird.
Now, is that an experience you ever had with your parents? Because I can't say... Like, my parents showed me music, but it was because they just had like a vinyl collection stashed in a storage part of our house, and I basically cracked it open and started messing around with it, right? So
yeah, I didn't have that. My parents showed me stuff on like MTV and VH1. That was on in the house, and so I remember crying to Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer video, and being enamored with George Harrison's I Got My Mind Set on You When the Whole Room Comes Alive. But I never bought music with them. My genesis was more so that I had friends who started listening to like Weird Al, and they had these CDs, and I was like, well, my parents have a CD player in their car, and I can go and buy a CD
Fancy.
of Weird Al. And so let's just put those two things together. And so I was like, my parents let me listen to Weird Al in the car a whole bunch. Like I went to the Wall. I don't know. What was your local record store?
The
Did you have
Wall.
one?
Yeah, we did. We had a local record shop called NRM. It was an acronym, and it stood for National Record Mart. And the first time I ever went in there, I just walked in and said, I'm going to work here someday. And
did you?
And I did. It turned out that my next door neighbor happened to be the regional manager for National Record Mart and got me my first job in the mall. And I told him, I was like, you don't even have to give me paychecks. Just let me pick out 5 or 6 CDs or however much my paycheck was worth. And that's literally what I did. I flipped the paycheck around and just bought all music.
Did you burn out on working there though?
No, you kidding me? No way, man. New albums coming out every week. No, never got burned out. I mean, I was so into music at that point that it was not only cool to be in the environment, but you got to talk, you got to do customer service in an environment that other people were clearly coming in and were passionate for. And so to be able to share those experiences and also discover new music. I would have never heard of the band Cake unless somebody came in there and said, hey, I'm looking for Cake, and we didn't have it. And I was like, who's that? And then I found out, and I was like, oh my God, I love this band, you know? So I discovered so many bands that way, just communicating with the customers in the shop. So no, could never burn out on that. No.
All right.
I missed that gig. Didn't pay well, but I missed that gig.
So I have one question before we get into music news that I wanted to toss at you. And you take a second to think on it. I see your shirt. I think it's the one that your daughter picked out for you, right? Yep. Aquabats.
That's right. Is this on video or are we doing just audio?
No, it's not.
Okay,
it's not.
audio?
But we'll theater of the mind.
You got it.
Band that you own the most merch from or of?
Oh, wow. Okay, all time?
So
all time? Like just still going?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, probably. I think right now, currently, mine is I think it's probably the Gaslight Anthem. And part of that's because it's whenever they put something else out, I'll get it for my wife or my wife will get it for me. Like we have a bunch of, and I'm talking like posters too, things like that, like any of that sort of collectible things. Like that's just one of our bonding artists. It's like this kind of experience that we have together throughout our relationship with this band. And so I think I've got like 6 shirts. She has 4. We have like 10 posters. Like, yeah, nice. I mean, you walk around our house and you just see it a ton. But I know that you've got some cool shoes and lots of shirts and stuff. So I'm wondering, is it Aquabats? Is it Weezer?
Well, They Might Be Giants might be up there.
They Might Be Giants.
I would have to say as a whole, probably They Might Be Giants. And the reason why it's not the aforementioned Weezer or the Aquabats is just They Might Be Giants have been a thing since 1982, right? So there has been a lot more to collect and obtain. And, you know, I go through T-shirts so fast. If I had to put some money on it, I would say They Might Be Giants. I mean, I have weird, obscure items from them. I have their first ever release, which is do you remember those flimsy disc vinyls?
Oh, yeah.
So I have their first ever release, which is on one of those flimsy disc vinyls. And when I met John and John, I showed it to him, and John was like, oh my God, I don't even think I have this anymore. And he flips it over. He goes, see this phone number on the back? That was my phone number at my old apartment when I moved to New York City. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And so it was cool to get that info and learn that stuff. But well,
that's also from the era when you would actually like mail in for merch, right? You'd hit up Asian Man Records by sending a letter, a self-addressed stamp envelope, or
Mike Park, you are the man. Money. How cool is Mike Park? That guy, I got in touch with him through writing a letter, like you were mentioning, and he wrote me back this huge letter, and I've been in touch with him ever since, still to this day. Could shoot an email over there, he'll get back to me, and I collected Asian Man #1 all the way through, you know, whenever I left college. And it's pretty wild to see not only all the bands, but band members that came out of that scene and have gone on to great success and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the guy was doing it out of his garage, and like he was like, "Come on over. You want to see the shop? I'm literally going to lift my garage over it, and I'm going to do it." But and show it to you. But yeah, They Might Be Giants by far. I mean, I've had hats from them, socks, shirts.
And what's your favorite? What's your favorite They Might Be Giants merch?
So, They Might Be Giants are they're so great, right? They're just on a different level for me.
Mm-hmm.
They made 2 songs for me. They made a ringtone when ringtones were a thing with my name in it.
Huh.
And then just recently they made a song and they sent it to me, and it's got my name in it. And it's about like a guy getting pulled over, and I'm the guy getting pulled over. And it's like, what are you doing, man?
That's so cool.
Like, apparently I'm like a reckless driver or something. Yeah. It's like a 2-minute jam. It's pretty wild. So to be able to like show that to my kid.
Yeah.
Is it's one thing to share a band, but to interact with a band and connect with them at a level like that. Even in the past, when I've interviewed bands, and it's one thing to say thank you, but you can really get in the weeds,
Mm-hmm.
and they get it because they're musicians like I am.
Yeah.
And so they know what it's like to be an artist and connect with somebody. Right. So, and I've got a cool story about that when we get to the Weezer portion.
All right, cool. Well, I'm going to touch on a couple of music history points here real quick. So back in 1965 this week, the Beatles played Shea Stadium, setting a record for the largest attendance at a pop concert. Over 55,000 fans, which now seems like nothing when you have music festivals and such. But back then, it was pretty bananas to have a pop group that drew that many people to that. And then a few years later, you had Woodstock, which kicked off this week, which had 400,000 people attending it. Kind of the mother of all music festivals, or at least the one that kind of kicked it off. Was a free ticket, wasn't supposed to be, but they kind of made it so because everyone just kind of showed up and they had no choice.
Yeah, you see a lot of footage of fences getting ripped open.
Yeah,
people just crawling in.
But very different from the Woodstock '99. I have not watched the documentary yet. I don't know if you have.
It's insane.
Have you watched it?
I've watched it. It is, first of all, hell of a documentary.
Is it?
I mean, it was just super well made. It's fantastic, and it really does a good job of capturing that, not only that moment, like that particular festival,
mm-hmm.
but just the social context that's surrounding it.
Yeah,
and it's the documentary is amazing. It's depressing. It's heartbreaking, and it's unreal in some points.
Yeah, I heard there's a lot of Moby, maybe too much Moby in the documentary.
Too much Moby.
Yeah, too much Moby. Yeah, that can be a thing. But
the 90s also had too much Moby.
Yeah, there was too much Moby all across the board. But to think that it had the namesake 30 years later of something that also ripped the fences down, but aside, then there were issues with the original Woodstock, but not to the extent of '99. It could have been a complete disaster, and instead you had these iconic moments of Hendrix and Santana and The Who come out of that, as opposed to Limp Bizkit and the Red Hot Chili Peppers or whatnot. Just there was things being set on fire. And it's just awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your mind might change a little bit when you watch Woodstock '99, because they talk about that first festival and how I don't want to spoil this for
mm-hmm.
you, but they talk about why people in society choose to remember that first Woodstock a certain way.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I definitely, it's on my list. I got to get it's HBO, right? I got to get my subscription back
Max.
up. Yeah.
I'll share my password. Isn't that what we do these days?
Something like that. Also this week, we lost Elvis Presley. Was a crazy thing. I'm not a big Elvis guy, but it's one of those things when you see the age that he died at, do you know how old he was when he died, Mark?
I'm going to guess, I don't. So I'm going to take a wild stab at it. And I feel like these guys always, these legends die so young, right? That's just
it's not the 27 club. That's right.
No, it's not the 27. I'm going to say 38.
Yeah, close. He's 42. And
42.
And you think,
oh my God, I'm 42.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like we're right in that area now.
No more cheese.
You think of
Yeah, no cheese. Order me no cheese pizza. Thank you.
You think of what his image became, that Vegas white suit and black hair, overweight, and I'm like, that feels like a 50, 60-year-old Elvis to me. When I see the Elvis impersonators, it feels like someone who's much older, and really he was doing that in his late 30s, and then died at 42. So crazy. And then another death, this one very different. Lou Pearlman died this week back in 2016. If you're not familiar with Lou Pearlman, he was the orchestrator of Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and all of the girls that you were chasing back in high school and such. He made the groups that made you look bad. I do still have a fondness for that music still. But so
I love that you can love that. I love that you can admit it, and I love that you love it.
Yeah, this is a no judgment zone, and we're going to get into that with Weezer too, for sure.
Good.
But in 2006, he was accused of running a huge Ponzi scam, $300 million in debt, went to jail in 2008, 25 years in prison, and then died in 2016.
Do you think they played Bye 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 or whatever that song was at his funeral? Do you think they...
Yeah. That makes you larger than life. Larger than life.
Yeah, it's just... Exactly. This is just... Yeah, look, don't go breaking my heart, Pearlman, all right? I feel like, when I pass away, I want my urn. I want to get an urn, and I want it to say, I earned it on the urn. like that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now that I know that Elvis died the same age I am, it's like I'm starting to reflect now during this podcast.
Yeah, did you have that when you hit 27? I remember when I hit 27 and I was like, all of those iconic artists that died at that age, you had Hendrix, Joplin, I think Morrison, I remember thinking like, okay, well, at least I got there. Like I don't have a famous record and I'm not anything, but like I'm 28. That feels good. Like,
right.
I
told my band we're canceling the tour. We're not touring while we're all 27. We're taking the year off. We don't want anything crazy to go down.
Yeah. Couple quick news things here. So we try not to talk too much COVID downer, but it is the world. Stevie Nicks canceling all of her shows. She had 5 or 6 of them, some big music festivals. Nine Inch Nails just scrapped their tour for the rest of the year. I'm hearing left and right a bunch of artists pulling out of markets. And then the big one that shocked me was Jazz Fest, which New Orleans, Louisiana, like I get it, but to not have a contingency plan where you have a bunch of music festivals that are shifting to fully vaxxed and proof and testing. And Jazz Fest, for whatever reason, just decided to shut the whole thing down. I think that they didn't think that they'd be able to implement it given the structure of that festival. It's a little different than others. Are you keen on going to any music festivals at the moment, Mark?
After seeing those pictures at Lollapalooza, man, I'm not. Living in New York City, I felt like I was too close to Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
The size of that crowd, Look, full disclosure, I'm fully vaccinated.
Yeah.
I wear my mask everywhere. I do my part, as best I can. And as much as I wanted to go to Atlantic City just last weekend to go see Fish on a 3-day run.
On the beach, I think, right?
On the beach. It was outside. Yeah. It was on the beach. I just, I'm not ready yet.
Nope.
And that's a big influence on that is, I have a kid and my kid's not vaccinated because she's 3 and if she gets it, takes it to daycare shuts down. Now I'm working full time with my wife at home with a kid running around. And it's just, it's something I can't go through again. That was a long 8 months when we did it the first time. So
I hear it.
We even canceled our vacation. We were supposed to go in September down to Florida and we all know what's going on in Florida. So I was like, look, I'm not doing it. I just can't do it. And a total bummer, but it is real life. And I grew up doing nothing but saving my money and going to festivals. So it's every time I see one happen, I'm conflicted because I want to be there, but I'm happy for the artists and I'm happy for the fans. But at the same time, I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So it's a tough thing to look at and watch, but boy, do I wish I'm there.
Yeah. So one alternative that I'll put out there, I don't know if you've paid for any live streams or anything during all this. I've done one or two, and they're pretty cool, like at home or in an empty venue. But there is something that I just bought tickets for. So Oasis is putting out. So they have a documentary / concert footage, but it's like top tier. It's not just like a thrown together thing. From Nebworth in '96, a big music festival in the UK, and that's going to be in movie theaters on September 23rd and 24th. Nice. But tickets are available now. And for some reason, I feel like I don't know how crowded it's going to be out here by me, but I could wear a mask and sit in a movie theater and watch some Oasis. Like, I think I'm good with that, Are you a big Oasis fan?
Oh, of course. I love Oasis.
Yeah.
I mean, as a drummer, being in an Oasis cover band is probably the easiest gig ever because it's the same drum beat for every song.
Is it?
I mean, I'm like, that guy made $1 billion doing the same.
Yeah.
Boom, cha, cha, do, do, cha, boom, cha, cha, do, do, cha. And I'm like, this guy is just every track.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey man, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same with Everclear. Same drum beat. Every song.
Man, the insights you get when you play an instrument in the band. I mean, Mark is a fantastic drummer. He's played in a gazillion bands. And it's something that I wouldn't have fully noticed, but now I'm never not going to hear that.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm pulling the curtain back too far. The guy for Oasis doesn't even play it. It's just on a lead. He's air drumming the whole time.
I mean, most of their songs were just written by Noel on an acoustic guitar, right. And I'm thinking that he just tossed it over there, and the guy was just like, "Yeah, I can play that again with this song too." So that's cool. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Well, if you trek out to the theater, it's an interesting experience watching a live concert.
Have you done that?
Something like that? I have. Yeah, I've done it 2, maybe 3 times. I saw someone took me out to see Rammstein.
Oh my gosh!
That's
a spectacle.
Awesome.
But no fake blood on you, which is great.
Right. I didn't have to go home and shower.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Although I was at the West 4th Theater, so I might have needed to shower.
Yeah.
But and then I saw Foo Fighters when they did the oh god, what album was it? I gotta remember. But they did a live concert.
Mm-hmm.
It was live. It was supposed to be live, and they had problems like broadcasting it. So we were all sitting in the theater like waiting, and so we were all just goofing off.
This is recently.
No, this is a couple years back.
Okay.
Matt Pinfield hosted it, so he was in there, and he was so funny. He stands up, he goes, "Yeah, I just got off the phone with Dave," and he's just going on and on about it, and everyone's going, "Sit down, man!"
Yeah.
Like yelling at him and stuff. But anyway, they played, and that was kind of fun. And I feel like I saw one more.
It's a cool experience, though, right? It seems like it'd be
you're gonna have fun if you
Yeah.
do it. If you do it, you're gonna have a blast.
And then I don't know if you've been keeping up on the Metallica Blacklist at all. They've got that Black Album anniversary kind of celebration, 53 covers, and Phoebe Bridgers doing Nothing Else Matters was, I think, last week, and then Weezer doing Enter Sandman.
I know.
So good and so perfect. And like, we're used to Weezer covers now, but still it got me excited when I saw that come out. I was like, yeah, no, I definitely need to check this out. It's going to be dope.
And and we'll get into this later, but deep down Rivers, the avant-garde came out a little bit.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, I want to shred."
That's right. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we're going to flip it over to side B now, since we're talking about Weezer. And when we're back, we're going to delve into that band and maybe get Mark to school me a little bit, because I know a bunch, but I'm not necessarily the purest fan. I'd love some insights.
It doesn't matter.
Welcome back. We're on side B. Thanks for flipping over.
Again, thank God, man. Side A was freezing in there, man. It was so cold.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking some Weezer now. I think that Adam and Dan will both be a little jealous, and I promised to them that we can have another dive into maybe some specific albums or whatnot from Weezer in the future. But given that I've got my buddy Mark here, Mark says hi. I think we're gonna go into the history of this band a little bit, and maybe I'd like to kind of figure out what makes them tick and do a little bit of a deep dive, if that's cool with you. So 15 albums, although by my kind of counting, I would say it's 14 albums. My buddy and I play a game where we rank albums and we never count B-sides collections, and Death to False Metal is pretty
Death
tough.
To False Metal.
Yeah. So, but we'll go with 15 albums. 15 albums, 26 years, 29 since they were formed. Just an incredible catalog for a band that's been around for that long.
Yeah, and it went by so fast. It's going by so fast.
It is. And only a couple spots where there were big gaps. You know, you had that 5-ish year gap between Pinkerton and the Green Album. And then there were some 3-year gaps. And you can kind of hear it sonically in the band, right? Between Maladroit, Make Believe, Red Album, you had some leaps. And then you just see when Rivers gets into a run. Because I feel like Red Album... should have the discography open, but I think it went Red Album, Ratitude, and Hurley very quickly, right?
Yeah, they were pretty much back to back to back.
Every year you got a Weezer album, and then you had to wait 4 years until Everything Will Be All Right in the end. But anyway, so let's start off with our sort of introductions to the band a little bit. I'll tell you, like I said, this is always a no judgment zone, not gatekeepy. I admittedly went to The Wall, my record store at the time, to buy Anyone for Doomsday by Power Man 5000. And
yes.
This is back in the day when you didn't have the internet to kind of track when things are coming or if there's news or whatever. So my dad was taking me to music practice, to bagpipe practice. And there was a record store on the way, and so I was like, can we pull over here? I want to get the Power Man 5000 album. And I go inside, and the guy looks at me funny, and he's like, yeah, we don't have that. And so I'm looking around the store. I know I got 5 minutes before my dad's like, we got to get back in the car. And I knew Buddy Holly, and I'd heard Hash Pipe, and I loved that song. I saw it on MTV with the sumo wrestlers, and I was like, this is cool. Like I just started playing in like a garage band, like a pop punk garage band with my friends, and I was like, let me grab the Green Album. You know, it was up on the wall. It was pretty fresh, and I remember mowing the lawn that weekend, like right after there, and cover to cover, falling in love with that album. Like the pop sensibility on that, it like scratched every itch for me of like loving pop music, but also wanting to play guitar and be in a rock band. It just hit me at the right time. And then I went back to the Blue Album and everything after that, and I stayed with the band. Although I missed Maladroit for whatever reason, I did not pick it up, and have gone back to that album in recent years, and it's one of my favorites because I feel like
it slays, super underrated.
It takes what I love about the Green Album and melds it with the roughness and the like actual rock sensibility of the early stuff. It rips, man. Every song on Maladroit kills. But what about you? So when did you first hear Weezer? Because I know you have a long history with the band.
Oh yeah, it's interesting because the band impacted me much like your story in a way like anything else in my life. It's pretty crazy. I was so the Blue Album came out, right? Sweater Song comes out. Mm-hmm. This is what 94, I believe.
Yeah.
And I was in the back of a limousine after the homecoming dance, and we turned the radio on because I was with a bunch of friends. We all, liked music, and I liked music, but I didn't love music yet. I was raised on the piano. I'd been doing that since I was 4, and I knew my dad was a drummer, but I didn't really know how that worked. I just understood that there was this thing called music, but I was super invested in Weird Al Yankovic, like
Same.
from like my early age. So when my dad would explain to me that no, that's not the real song, it's this other song, I like didn't believe it, right? I was like, Tom Petty didn't write that, it's Weird Al Yankovic.
Amazing.
So my whole life was just Weird Al makes these hilarious songs and he's the best, right?
Yeah.
So 94, in the back of this limo after Homecoming, and that first opening riff from Sweater Song comes on, and I tell everyone to shut up. I was like, everyone, please be quiet right now, oh my God. And they're like, whoa, what's going on? I was like, I got to hear this. And I sat there and I made everyone be quiet for 3 minutes. And I just looked at everybody and I said, I'm playing music for the rest of my life.
No way.
And they were like, what? I was like, I'm playing music for the rest of my life. I need to do something that just happened.
Wow.
And so the radio station didn't say the name of the band or anything, so I didn't know who it was.
Can't Google it.
And can't Google it. This, there was no internet, nothing. So I didn't know what to do. So I literally parked myself in front of the radio and just sat there the entire weekend until it came on again. I mean, I probably got 30 minutes of sleep. I sat there 3 days.
Wow.
And it finally came on, and the guy goes, Weezer. And I was like, Weezer, what a funny name.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never going to forget that. Immediately went to the record store, got the Blue Album on cassette, and was like, put it in. And I must have listened to it 1,000 times in a row until the tape broke. and I was like, oh my God, I have to, how do I be a part of this?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, my dad's got that drum set under the stairs. I don't know how to put it together though. Let me ask around to my friends. My friend had a kid drum set called Neon Thunder.
Yeah.
It was like a plastic drum set. I mean, it was meant for like 4-year-olds.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, can I borrow that? Can I mow your lawn 40 times in a row and
get that
and take this? He's like, dude, just take it. Whatever. It's been sitting there for like 10 years.
Right.
Great. Took it home, found one half of my dad's hi-hat cymbals, and I took his stool workbench that was like tall. It's like one of those like high-rise table chairs. And I set the cymbal on top of it, and I got some sticks from a buddy, and I sat on this Neon Thunder plastic drum set and taught myself how to play drums to the Weezer album.
Amazing.
And I did that for an entire summer until I knew every song and didn't miss I didn't have a full drum set, so I didn't hit everything, but that, and it just changed my life. And from that moment on, I've never not played music.
That's incredible. And so did you stayed with them through Pinkerton? But then I think you had a little bit of the disappointment.
Yeah, we had a falling out. We had a falling out.
Yeah, so my understanding of it, and I've never read the Pinkerton Diaries, but I'm assuming that some of it, I know things have come out in the years since, that because of the lack of, so there it is, nice. Mark's holding up the book, which comes with a bunch of demos as part of the Alone series too, right? It's got a CD in there of
it was the only way you could get Alone 3.
Yeah,
which was everyone was craving that. So, and they only made, I don't know if they reprinted this book, but apparently this one's one of the first pressings. Obviously, I ordered it right away.
Yeah,
and I got lucky because I didn't have any money back then. I was like, I can't buy this thing. What am I going to do?
Right.
But I was like, I got to do it. I don't care. I just want to eat for a month.
Yeah.
And so I did it. And, I was fortunate enough to get one of these. And it came with, these Alone demos. And it just fills in the gaps. Like, to your point, the band impacted me so much. That 2 years between the Blue Album and Pinkerton felt like forever.
Because you didn't have a way to engage with a band at that point. Yeah.
You didn't.
Yeah.
Well, except the fan club, which I immediately signed up for, and wrote to. And, back then you'd have to send a self-addressed stamped envelope, a picture of yourself so they could send you back a fan club card.
Amazing.
And just your address. And this band, it was so special what they did. Their fan club was amazing. They had this address book. You gave them your address, and they printed this address book with everybody who was in the fan club, because it was only like 1,000 or 2,000 people or something at the time. And they made this address book, and they sent it to you so you could be pen pals with these people and whoever was fans of the band.
Wow.
I still have this book. I'll show it to you someday. It's really cool. And I was like, this is incredible. Oh my God, there's somebody else in Ohio who likes Weezer.
Yeah.
They're right here. Their name's Peter. Oh my God, I got to write this guy. and there were people from Japan. There's people all over the world, right? And that's how you stayed in touch with other people who are fans of the band. And that's how I got all my initial like bootlegs and first bootlegs. And like, because unless they came to your town, how were you ever going to see this band?
Right.
And be like, well, Well, my friend from Iowa told me that they wrote to the person in Japan, and the person in Japan dubbed a tape off TV of a live performance, and then blah, blah, blah. And word just gets around. It takes months, but
Right.
word gets around. Next thing you know, you're blindly sending a $50 money order from the bank to someone in Japan you've never met in hopes that you're going to get a crappy VHS bootleg back.
Yeah. Explaining to your
but
parents why you
you
need a $50 money order, by the way, to send to Japan.
Oh, man. So it became a community, and it was so awesome. It was a bunch of nerdy kids who were discovering music and had the same sensibilities, all encapsulated in this band.
Yeah.
And we all looked like Rivers. We all sang like Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of like already doing that.
Yeah.
Except for this guy, like someone said he was cool enough to do it for real.
Yeah.
Right. And we're like, oh my God,
And then Pinkerton hits, and it's everything you want it to be, right?
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. So that's when I was working at the music store, National Record Mart.
Mm.
Now I was able to get the album a couple days before everybody else,
Nice.
right? That was like I scored some cool points there.
Yeah.
And I must have listened to it 100 times before it came out. And, but I didn't want to ruin it for anybody. I didn't want to be like,
Sure.
this track's the best or anything. And back then on CD, Pearl Jam was the first band to ever put a clear back so they could put a picture behind the CD.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Pinkerton did it too, but they left the black, and you had to pop off the black thing to see a map of this mystical land. Like nobody knew what it was yet. Like
Wow.
again, no internet, so you didn't know what any of this stuff was.
Yeah.
You didn't know what this artwork meant or anything.
Yeah.
And so you'd pop off the black thing, and there was some sort of map back there, and everyone's like, "What is this?" It was just created this mythos that was just incredible. And I was like, "This band can't get any better." And the album was just so raw, and he was singing about stuff I never, like sex and like lesbians, and I was like, I don't know what any of this stuff is, and it was a pretty eye-opening experience. That, and then of course every band I was in at that time in my hometown, we all covered, every song on the album. We just played as much Weezer as we could.
Right. But wasn't a commercial success at all, right? Was it there? He has felt, or did feel at least at the time, that it wasn't received in the way that he hoped it was, especially for something that was so personal, that he put so much of himself into the writing of Pinkerton. My understanding is that there was a little bit of a blowback, that it wasn't embraced in the way that I think he hoped it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friends, we couldn't believe it, right? We were like, what, Rolling Stone, what are you talking about? You guys are morons.
Yeah.
I'm never reading this magazine again. Like,
Right.
How is this not the greatest thing ever? So I think the hardcore fans were like overwhelmed with how awesome it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like just music critic, because they probably wanted the same bubbly, Buddy Holly
Sure.
and bouncing around and stuff. And that stuff's great. Don't get me wrong. The music that came out of that power pop scene in the early 90s, whether it be Fountains of Wayne, Weezer, Jellyfish, all, you can go down and down the food chain, incredible music. But this was just the opposite of that. And bands didn't take huge risks like that. What a dangerous, move. But Geffen was like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think, and they got into it with Geffen later on, obviously, and had their falling out. But
yeah, you don't know what the backstory is, right? You just hear the album.
Yeah.
You don't know. You don't know how the sausage got made.
But you know that the band then disappears. If 2 years felt rough, you know that this band that put out this album that just cut you and then disappears for 5 years. It's brutal. Then it must have been, as a fan who was resonating with it in real time, to have that kind of gap. And there may have been tours. I don't think he went to Harvard for a bit of that, and then was like, he had a side project, I think.
So this is what's fun about it, right? Is again, pre-internet, you just hear stuff, right? I mean, talk about the ultimate telephone game, right? You don't know what's going on. I have one friend telling me, oh yeah, he's in a basement. He won't come out.
Right.
He's painting his walls black. He's got curtains. He's not talking to anybody. And then I've got another friend telling me, hey, he went to Harvard. He's probably not going to play music anymore. Then where I grew up in Ohio, I was close to Cleveland, and we were able to intercept some Canadian broadcast channels.
Okay.
And there was this channel called Much Music.
Oh, I love Much Music.
Yeah, and Much Music was great. And they did an interview with Weezer, and it was the first time I saw like Rivers like kind of look depressed. And he like didn't want to talk during the interview, and he was just like yeah, I don't know if we're going to do this anymore. Like, fame is weird. Like, I don't get this. Like, and I was like, oh my God, no, what's happening? Like, please don't break up. Like, don't go away. And, you know, as we learn in the future of what really was happening, you know, because also if you collected everything, which I did, you know, with all these other pen pals, I was getting like obscure Weezer releases from Australia because it had a different B-side than the English one did, which had a different one than the German one did. And, you know, I got this, I think it was for either El Scorcho or, because Pink Triangle didn't have an official release. I have like a radio DJ, like a rare radio DJ version. But one of the singles from Pinkerton had an X-ray on it of like a leg that was broken. And everyone's like, what the hell is this? Yeah. You know? Yeah. And you don't learn till later, oh, Rivers was born with a leg that was shorter than his other leg, and he had surgery to extend his leg. And you're like, what? And so you find out he's going through all this while he's at Harvard, while he's depressed, while he's, you know, thinking he's not going to make music anymore. And he's making the most powerful music I've heard in my life. Yeah. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
And so it seems like he then decides to kind of pivot. He's studying music at school. And and pivots a bit to say, well, then I can figure out pop music. I can make pop music, and I can do it, and it'll rock. But I can do this really well. And he starts kind of working on the formula. And so when you have the Green Album come out, it's lacking that personality, that depth of what he was writing about, but it's slick. And they suddenly have these hits now. They have Island in the Sun, which still gets radio play. It's crazy. You had Hash Pipe, like you had Photograph. You had a bunch of these songs that suddenly start getting radio play again. And they bring back Rick Ocasek, right? We could talk about some of the producers they've worked with, which are fantastic. Right. But they bring back Rick. Yeah, they bring back Rick. But as I was saying, then they do Maladroit, which again, I think I was so built into the cycle of artists putting out albums every 2 to 3 years that like I just wasn't staying on top of it, and didn't realize that a new album had come out. I remember seeing the Keep Fishing video with the Muppets, which is one of my favorite music videos of all time.
So jealous.
It's the greatest thing ever.
It's the best.
Yeah. But I totally missed that. And when I go back and listen to those, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so how did that happen? Because you fell in love with this Green Album.
I know.
Right? You loved it so much. I had the opposite effect, right? The Green Album came out, and you know, to your point, we had waited 5 years, and I listened to it once through, and I go, oh my God, I'm never going to listen to this again. I'm done. I'm out. Like, what are you doing? What just happened? What new bass player? This is what happens when Matt Sharp leaves. Yeah, you know, da da da. And no offense to Mikey Welsh, because he's a sick bass player, and rest in peace to him as well. Him. But I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And I heard Island in the Sun. I was like, this sucks.
What is this? Yeah, what is this? Yeah,
like, now the first single was great.
Yeah, I usually skipped Island in the Sun because it was kind of a buzzkill on the whole thing. I wanted to get to Crab and Knock Down, Drag Out, and all those other jams. But I loved it, and then I must have moved on to other stuff because I just didn't stick with it. I picked up Make Believe when that came out, and I was disappointed in that because I was like, there's some good songs on here, but this isn't doing it the way that the last one did. And it wasn't until, and I remember talking to you, because you and I were friends at this point, when the Red Album comes out. And
yeah,
I remember
just became friends. Yeah.
I remember coming to you and being like, so are you getting the new Weezer album? It's the Red Album, and it's going to be awesome. And you were like, I don't know, man. Like, the last one was rough, and like, it hasn't been the same. But I think we did this with a couple of bands. We did this with Green Day too. Like, we fed off of each other a little bit. And I remember buying the Red Album, and I think you did too. I remember coming and talking to you, because there were some of the deeper cuts on it. I love the Red Album, by the way. I think that the Red Album was a great comeback for their sound. 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that the deluxe version, because I feel like the extra songs are the best tracks.
This is what you said. You said Miss Sweeney. You were like, why isn't Miss Sweeney on the regular album?
Yeah, it kills when those hidden B-side gems are just like the best on the album. I mean, look, an artist doesn't know. They like what they like, and they're going to put out what they think is the best because it's what they want to do, or whatever the label or whoever has a say. But it was a shame that the deluxe version just didn't come out all at once.
Let's go back to Make Believe real quick, because that's obviously that is the point of contention. I think beyond that rift between Pinkerton into that next era of what Weezer became. Make Believe is still a sticking point with fans, right? They went to Rick Rubin, right? Rick Rubin produced, legendary producer,
awesome dude,
right? Legendary producer.
The one time he produced a band without his beard, and I think that was why it wasn't 16. I'm just kidding. He had his beard.
But were you in the fold? Because I know that there were leading up to that. So after Maladroit, you get into another one of those 3-year gaps where everyone's like, "What's going on here? What's about to happen?" And a bunch of early recordings came out, but I believe none of them made it to this final album. And I'm wondering, were you a fan that was in the fold at that point following this stuff, or had you kind of tapped out?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because there was this real cool period with Weezer when the internet started being like more of a mainstream thing and less of like a nerdy thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Weezer.net at the time. It wasn't Weezer.com or whatever they have now. I believe it was Weezer.net. And I was like, .net, wow, you got to know your stuff, you know? And anyway, it was this weird website, and it was kind of like message boardy, and there'd be some weird messages on there that you could kind of like feel what was going on with the band. But they, during the Green, I think was it the Green album? There was, at one point, they started just uploading weird snippets of songs.
Okay.
And asking fans to react to them and say, what do you like? What do you not like?
I think that was Maladroit, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it was Maladroit. And so, by the way, I have all of those burnt on a CD. I have like every spec of almost every Weezer thing that's ever existed.
And you still have it. Like you're in an apartment.
Yeah, I still have it. Yep, I still have it on a CD somewhere. And I was like, what a cool... That's when I started to get back into the band and said, okay, this is cool. Mm-hmm. They felt like they did the hardcore fans wrong, and they want to reconnect with them and kind of make up for it. That's why I think Maladroit was a killer comeback album for me, at least, because I was just so disappointed with the Green one. But yeah, you get to Make Believe. I'm still tracking the band. I'm still in the fan club. I'm still, I wasn't going to give up on them. I was like, look, not every band has every single album being, as good. They set the bar so high with Pinkerton and Blue. And look, you're never going to be able to affect my life again the way you did the first time I heard you and changed the course of my entire life.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen, right? So Make Believe came out, and again, I think they set themselves up for failure, at least in my eyes, because they literally put a sticker on it. I remember they put a sticker on it that said like, hardcore guitar driven Weezer is back or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I've heard this before. Don't I put it on. I was like, this is like leftover Green Album stuff. What's happening? Like, what are you doing to me? With like, maybe you were feeling some Maladroit, come on, you know? And I was just like, we are all on drugs? Like, really? Like, what are we doing?
Right.
Like,
right.
And and what was the other single on that? I can't even.
Perfect Situation.
Hated that song when that came out. I was so.
But Beverly Hills, their first #1 modern rock hit, first Grammy nomination ever. Beverly Hills, Perfect Situation, also another #1, their second #1. So it did what maybe was the intention for Rivers. Nobody really knows, but like if he wanted to prove that he could write these, like come up with the formula to write these pop smashes, he did it. He totally did it.
And you have to accept that, right? Like, because at the end of the day, this isn't about you. It's about them. This is their art. They're creating it.
Yeah.
They're giving me the luxury of judging it or accepting it or being a part of it if I choose to do so. So me as a musician, I was never one of those guys that would watch a band and say, I'm better than that. We should be up on stage. I'm thinking, hey, this band busted their ass probably. Mm-hmm. They're working really hard. They're doing the best they can right now with this opportunity. And Weezer was this, I just had to accept that Weezer wasn't the same band, right?
Yeah.
And as more stories came out as to what was really happening surrounding Pinkerton, you start to understand, it's like you get it. You're like, okay, like the whole band could have left Rivers if they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get that Matt did. Matt wants to be his own creative dude. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
And you hope there's no bad blood there as a fan of the band because you're hoping one day they'll reunite. But you really understood that serious life, real life, is intertwining with this marriage essentially between four people that are creating music you hope you like. And so I accepted it. That album, Make Believe, made me say, hey, look, I'll give every album they come out with a shot, but they're going to have to win me back every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like a douchebag saying that, but
no. And I think, I think that we all have that relationship with artists. I mean, some of my favorite bands, I still have that. One of my favorite bands is Jimmy Eat World, and I always buy whatever they put out, but I do go into it saying, man, I hope that they deliver on something or bring me something here that I'm going to be excited about, you know? So then you get off. So the Red album, I think, is a great then jumping point to them proving themselves back to their fans a little bit.
Dude, Troublemaker.
Oh my God, it's so good. But then, so then you get to, I love Hurley. You get to Ratitude and Hurley, where now he's doing a lot of co-writes. You get him there with Butch Walker, Marvelous 3, right? He's doing stuff. He's doing
Atlanta,
stuff
Georgia.
with All American Rejects co-writes. He starts doing stuff with Dan Wilson. Desmond Child, like he co-writes a song on Hurley with Desmond Child, who had written hits for Bon Jovi and Ricky Martin and Alice Cooper. Like he all of a sudden just like starts this new take on his formula of how he's writing these great pop songs by doing these collabs. And then most of these situations, there's no feature. You don't see it on the album. You don't know that he co-wrote a song with the dude from Sugar Cult or whatever, but like if you dig into the liner notes, you're like, oh, okay, this is why this sounds a little different. And again, like Hurley and Ratitude have these great pop jams on them that I could see if you're not into that green maladroit sound, might not have been your thing again, because it almost is them going back to that with some fresh eyes on it. But some of the songs on Hurley are some of my favorite to go back to, just very easy to listen to. Train Wrecks and Memories. There's great jams on those.
It's interesting. All those albums, like that run, right? The late 2000s into the early, 2010s, feel like one big album.
They do. They really do.
Right?
Yeah.
It's almost like if they were to have put out a triple album, I would have been like, "Oh, cool," because it's interesting. I'm one of the few, maybe a few people. I love Ratitude. I don't know why.
Yeah, Ratitude's fun.
Do.
It is.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
And once I accepted who this band was, kind of moving forward, I was like, why am I being so judgy? Like, I'm hoping people would just like my music too, And I really gave it a chance. More so than I ever did after Pinkerton with any of their other releases. Even the Red album, I liked it, but I really opened up and I was just like, you know what? I'm going for a run today and I'm running to some Ratitude.
Yeah.
This is actually kind of a blast. And at the root of me, I love power pop music and melody and, choruses that hook you in. And he was just delivering song after song after song. And I'm like, this guy, there's a reason why this guy's successful.
And it starts to feel like that show that maybe you were into at first and then you fell off and then you realize that they're in their 7th season and you're like, oh, maybe I'll go back and check that out. And there's actually been ups and downs, but consistently great throughout all of those seasons of that TV show. Like this band has built this catalog that, you can go back and you can pick and choose songs and albums that you love or hate, but you can't take away from what they've built, and you can gloss over the stuff that you don't like, but maybe also find something that you didn't appreciate in your headspace then. It's something that we talk about a bunch here, is like where you're at when you listen to a song, whether it's how you're feeling that day or where you're at in your life, can really impact you. And so maybe you go back to something and find some value or purpose or a different perspective on it now that you're 10 years older. And so again, I went back to Maladroit after I kind of skipped over it. and was like, oh no, this speaks to me. Like this is a banger of an album. And then I remember you and I, so you have Everything Will Be Okay in the End. Sorry, that's the name of that album, right? Everything Will Be Okay in the End. I remember that was another moment where you and I are like, I wonder what this is going to be. You had heard a song, I hadn't heard anything yet, and you were like, this is dope. This is going to be a great album. Back with Okasic again, and they like that was a really solid album. I haven't gone back to it as much recently as I listened to it in the moment there, but it was a 4-year gap where you're like, I don't know what's going on there. And then I remember hearing Back to the Shack, and I'm like, all right, is this the gear that you guys are going in? Like, this is the sentiment. We're going to get rid of the pop thing, and we're going right back to that garage rock. We're going back.
Yeah, it's interesting because Back to the Shack is like, it's almost too on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of the frustrating things where you like the head nod, but you don't want the whole thing to be a head nod.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're like, this song is an entire head nod to the Blue Album. And you're like, I mean, it's catchy. And if it came out when the Blue Album came out, I would love this song so much.
Yeah.
And I do. And I love the song, but it's like super on the nose.
Yeah.
Right. But it got you super excited for the album.
Exactly.
Now, with this particular album, they did the pledge music for this.
What's that?
Do you remember Pledge Music?
Mm-mm.
It was where you gave bands basically money ahead of time, and they would give you the finished product, but they would give you incentives.
Oh no!
To buy into their whatever they were working on.
Okay.
And they've since gone out of business for good reason. I'll tell you that story off the air.
Okay.
But it was called Pledge Music, and so Weezer did this cool thing where it was like, hey, throw us $15, we'll give you the CD. Throw us $25, we'll give you a sticker and the CD, whatever. And you could work your way up. And they had this one tier where you could get your name on a Weezer poster. And it was like the Weezer poster, but the poster was just the big Weezer logo with everybody's name basically around it, who contributed at that tier level. And I was like, I mean, this is my one shot to have my name on some Weezer merch. Like, gotta do it,
Of course.
Probably cost me like way too much money, but I had to do it.
Yeah.
So I did it, and I still have it. It's really cool to see my name in there. But it was cool. You felt invested in a different way, and it really felt like they were, again, trying to reconnect with the fans, do something good. And when they put out Back to the Shack, you're like, all right, you're speaking to me again the way you did from the very beginning. And I was in a band at the time that was very influenced by Weezer and other bands like Weezer, like Ozma and some other stuff. And we were just like, we couldn't wait. So instead of having band practice, we instead had a listening party when the album came out.
Awesome.
And we just looked at each other and we're like,
yeah,
they're back.
Yeah.
Baby! And we were all like super jazzed. And
Yeah.
So we loved that. But he wrote with Daniel Brummel on that album too.
I was going to say, that's Ozma. Yeah.
Writing with people, he was starting to get in the mix with Ozma. And if people don't know this, by the way, go to Rivers Cuomo's website, go to Rivers' website, and he does this really cool thing, this database of all of his old demo tapes and just stuff that's on his computer. And you can buy it. And so,
Really?
and he has it grouped by like years.
Huh.
So, and it's huge chunks of data. So it's like, I can buy, like, I just bought like, it's called Weezma.
Okay.
And it's the era when him and Daniel were together, just making music and just hashing out ideas. And you can just go and you can buy it.
And you can hear the rough tapes of it?
Everything. It's
Wow.
crazy. Some stuff is like just like little riffs. Some stuff is more full blown songs. Some stuff is like him just talking into like a handheld recorder. Like it's mind blowing. And it was like $5. I'm like, $5 to hear your brain in 1996 when Pinkerton was happening?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's pretty cool. So everyone go check that out. If you're a hardcore fan, it's crazy insight into a band like I've never seen before.
Well, and he said he's meticulous with that databasing thing. He said he'll have a folder of thousands of demos and pieces and stuff, and he has a program.
Yes.
He has a program, and he's like, okay, I need a piece that's at a certain tempo in a key, and he can punch that in and find something that he's recorded. He's just like cataloged all these riffs and bridges and choruses and melodies, and he can kind of piecemeal and Frankenstein songs together if he wants to. And it's kind of genius. And there's some people who I'm sure would feel that that's a little too calculated for something that, you know, you look at music as art and it's supposed to be, or you say it's supposed to be one thing or another. But I think that there's a lot to be said for someone who can actually craft a pop song, an earworm, right?
And this is how he makes his art, man. You
can't, for real.
Look, everybody makes art differently. Like, I write most of my songs on a bass guitar.
Yeah.
Because I'm more concerned about melody, right? And then I go put the cool riff in later. You know, some people write backwards, forwards. It doesn't matter as long as it gets done. But yeah, check it out, Mr. Rivers' Neighborhood. That's what it's called.
Mr. Rivers' Neighborhood.
Yeah, it's like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It's pretty cool.
But one other song on Everything Will Be All Right in the End, which I pointed out in our community a while back as we were having like a sporadic Weezer conversation, was I've Had It Up to Here, which, again, going back to the writing partners, it's a fun song. It's weird. It's Weezer, but it's not. And then you see that he wrote it with Justin from The Darkness, and you're like,
right.
Oh, now it totally makes sense why this song sounds this way. Like, this is 100%. It's a Darkness-inspired Weezer song.
And everybody knows Rivers was obsessed with, obviously he points it out in lyrics like, oh, I love Kiss and everything. Mm-hmm. But he was a shredder, man. He was a metalhead with long hair, and he loved shredding. And if you heard his previous band, Avant Garde, you can, YouTube old clips and demos. You're like, this is Rivers Cuomo? He's like 80s hair metal to the T, man. Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
And I don't want to gloss over everything else that came after that because there's a bunch of great stuff. The White Album.
I know, we could go on for 5 hours.
I loved the Black Album. It was interesting to me. So I skipped Pacific Daydream for whatever reason. It was another moment where I just wasn't tapped in and I missed it. But I remember that was nominated for Grammys, although I think it was the poorest. It was the worst performing album. Yeah, I think it never cracked the top 20, which I think every single other album has. So I haven't gone back to that one. That's one that I've kind of missed. But I did get into the Black Album. There was some great stuff on the Black Album. And the Teal Album was obviously fun. But one thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up is kind of something that I mentioned to you when we were talking before all this. That, again, my daughter was listening to pop radio a bunch on a road trip recently. And a Weezer song came on that I knew, but it sounded sonically cohesive with everything else that they were playing. They were playing Ed Sheeran and Justin Bieber and whatever else, and it gelled. And I was like, it's so crazy. It was all my favorite songs off of OK Human, and they did that with AJR. Again, Rivers pivoting from being kind of averse early on to listening to pop music and being aware of what else is going on in music to like fully embracing it and working with breaking bands and taking them out on the road and collaborating with them. But having this sort of ability to consistently deliver in a pop space for a band that's about to hit its 30th anniversary of forming is crazy. And I look at the other bands and tell me if you think I'm missing anyone, but I heard a Billie Joe Armstrong song on that same, it was a cover, but it was on that same channel. And I'm like, this doesn't fit. I don't know why this is playing here. Green Day has never been able to recapture that. And you think about the success they had in 2004 with American Idiot, which is right around the time of Make Believe. So there was this movement of embracing this pop rock, these rock ballady rock anthems in pop culture, but Weezer has always been able to sustain that, where Green Day's been chasing that ever since 2004, I think. You look at the Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters put out fantastic albums consistently, but they're never pop albums. They've leaned into that rock space. They went back to the garage and fully hit that.
Yeah, just embraced it, yeah.
Blink-182, another band, they went out on like the Honda Civic tour with Weezer, and they have reinvented themselves and kind of tried to hit a pop space again, but nobody does it like Weezer does. And here's where, and again, this is not a judgmental space, but this could ruffle feathers. I would put Weezer then not in the realm of those bands, although they're an alt rock band. Weezer is then like Coldplay. They're like Maroon 5. You hear a Coldplay song or you hear a Maroon 5 song over the years and it's changed, but you can tell it's still that band. They still sound like them.
Yeah, it's 100%.
And comparing Weezer to those bands is probably not the most popular thing to do because those bands have been labeled pretty corny. But I think Weezer is the only band that I can think of that has been able to do that, but also retain some kind of
like cred,
yeah,
original, yeah. And I think that has to do with where they came from, right?
Yeah.
They didn't. Coldplay came right out of the gate and were that, right? Weezer was more of this like word of mouth, hidden gem, weird thing bubbling up. You got to remember when Buddy Holly was up for like video of the year that year, it was up against like TLC Waterfalls and like all this other stuff that was like playing nonstop on MTV. And this Buddy Holly thing gets notoriety because the video was super cool, right?
Yeah.
And and it was like, well, who are these guys? This is weird. They didn't insert themselves into the music industry the way Coldplay did. So that's why I think they're able to sort of fly under the radar when it comes to avoiding that. Although I will say, to be fair and to be a little critical, I've obviously come back around on Weezer. Now, I'm not invested in the same way I was in the early days. These last few albums, like you said, the Pacific Daydream, Black Album, Teal, it's all blending together for me again.
Sure.
And a lot of my friends that were hardcore Weezer fans have just like abandoned them totally. And even comedian Hari Kondabolu has a great comedy bit about like what happened to Weezer. Like, how can you be like 50 and singing about teenage stuff, or whatever? And when you take a step back, you're like, I guess that could be weird and cheesy and corny for the people that were there from the beginning that changed their life like they did for me. So in the mainstream, it's weird. It's like they're in this like purgatory of they're not the cheesy Coldplay. By the way, Coldplay's awesome. And
yeah, they're
Coldplay's
great.
Concerts are awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anybody says about Coldplay. But they're sort of under that Coldplay cheese, but above the super underground indie cool thing, right?
Yeah.
And they created their own space and they get to live in it, man. And like, what bands get to survive 30 years, let alone 3 years or even 3 albums or whatever?
Putting out successful pop hits too. That's the thing.
Now, I will say it's a little frustrating when you see the Hell Omega tour and you see the entire place stand up for a standing ovation when they play Toto's Africa.
Sure, yeah, of course.
And then they're all sitting down going, what's this sweater song they're singing about?
Yeah.
Gotta say that hurts a little bit, but that's just a generational thing.
Yeah.
But look, kudos to Rivers, the guys, this thing all could have ended in 1996.
Yeah.
And to think the people that discovered them after that, like yourself included, or anybody who's a fan now, we're lucky to have this music in our lives. So, good on Rivers, good on the band for sticking it out. And they've switched things up a bunch too. They brought in a different drummer, as we were talking about, John Freeze, right? And,
Josh Freeze, and that was at a time. Sorry. Yeah, that was at a time. And then
Patrick
Pat
was playing guitar because he had the special goodness and played in the Rentals and was doing some weird stuff and fun stuff. And by the way, fun fact: do people know that Maya Rudolph was in the Rentals? Do people know this?
Wow.
Maya Rudolph from SNL was in the Rentals.
Wow. I knew she could sing. I've heard her sing, but I didn't know that she...
Yeah, go back, watch their first video or their first couple videos. It's pretty... You're like, whoa, because she doesn't look like the way she looks now, and she plays keyboard. It's really fun. But the band Weezer is connected with so many fun things, in my life, and I'm sure everybody's life, that they've hit a lot of touch points. So... Look, I got married the day after I saw a Weezer show. I broke my collarbone the day after a Weezer show. I changed the course of my entire life after listening to a Weezer song. They are 100%, without a doubt, ingrained in my life in a way that no other band can ever be, because they changed my life. And so that's all you could ever ask from an artist as an artist.
Yeah. And they put on a heck of a show, man. There's the spectacle and the production is great. You know, it's not as over the top usually as a Coldplay or a Muse show maybe, but it's close. And that, like,
Hell Omega, they're having some fun.
And good for them, man. Like the one that I saw where the Pixies opened up, that Rivers was out in a fake boat in the audience singing No Scrubs, and I'm like, what am I even watching right now? Like he's 50 something, right? Like it's crazy, but I'm going to give you one more tidbit, Liam, please,
before we go, because I know we have to wrap, and I could do it. We didn't even touch on Songs from the Black Hole. We got to do.
I know. Yeah, we'll do
some addendum.
We'll
do addendum
for sure.
So just to. This is how cool it was back in the day, pre-phones, pre-internet, pre-anything. For anybody who's listening to this that wasn't alive to sniff that era, right? I call it the payphone era, right?
Yeah.
So after I heard the Sweater Song, I went to Cleveland, which was I grew up in a town just outside of Cleveland, and I went to a place called Peabody's Down Under when Weezer was on that first tour. I walked up to the venue, which only held 100 people. Right. Bought a ticket the day of the show.
Wow.
For $3 to see Weezer.
Oh my God, that's insane.
I still have my ticket stub.
Wow.
And it's moments like that that I feel like unfortunately they're kind of missed upon now. The whole mystery of a band and an artist, and what you sat there and you read the lyrics and leafed through the booklet, and you're like. They created a different theme and vibe. I mean, unfortunately, most of that is gone, but the music is still strong, and you can still connect in a different way. But it was magical back then, Liam. I thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this.
Yeah.
I still have my, if it's too loud, turn it down. Not only T-shirt, but a huge giant banner that I got from Spencer's Gifts.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, we had Spencer's. Yeah.
In 1995, that I used to force every one of my bands I've ever been in to let me hang it up behind me while I played drums. And I'll show you this. This is my original Weezer Blue Album T-shirt from 1994.
Oh my gosh! Look at that.
Size extra large, because my dad told me I would grow into it.
Wow, that's in great condition too.
Medium.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I took care of it. I only wore it on special occasions.
Yeah.
When my band covers Weezer, I bust it out.
You didn't get married in that shirt. You got married in a Presidents of the United States of America shirt?
I did, yeah. Because that's, you don't wear the shirt of the band you're going to see.
No, of course.
I wore Presidents.
I remember that, yeah.
Mach 5 t-shirt. The Mach 5 song had just come out.
So good.
It was, anyway, love you, Liam.
Yeah, love
Weezer.
you too, man. Thank you.
Love
Thank
your
you for doing
co-host
this
for taking
today.
a break so I could sneak in. High five him for me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so Weezer, just we've talked about a bunch of incredible bands on this podcast, and obviously much more to talk about in the future. But there is something highly unique about them, and the fact that they can still do it and are still doing it with 2 albums out this past year is incredible. Thank you, Mark, for being here. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Retro Groove. We're part of the Retro Logic Network. You can check out the website, retrologic.games, for social links, merch, community, hop in the Discord, and much more. Have a good one.